folks who are just joining us. Very happy to see everyone here. Today's topic is going to be on using ChatGPT specifically to tell better stories using AI. So as people are joining, I'm going to highly encourage everyone to have some version of an AI chatbot open on your computer. You can use ChatGPT, you can use Bard, you can use kind of whatever you want. Today's techniques are going to be tool agnostic. I'm going to be using ChatGPT just because it's simple and it's very commonly used, but feel free to use whichever one you want because today's topics will be useful regardless. All right. Let's go ahead. I'm going to stop playing Daft Punk and let's go ahead and get started and officially welcome everyone into today's workshop. Really happy to see some familiar faces, really happy to see some new faces. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Dave Collins. I'm the founder and CEO of Oak and Reads, an interactive training company based in the Bay Area. I know people are joining us from all over today, so I'm really happy to see the turnout. These AI topics have been really popular. They have been really interesting. And this content I'm going to present to you today just scratches the surface. This is an evolving document. I was making updates this morning as I'm learning more, as the tools are changing. So please treat today's workshop as a work in progress because it may be very different a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. That's the nature of the technology we're using. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let me go ahead and get started. Again, I see a question. Will the recording be available? Yes, I'm going to put it on the Oak and Reads YouTube page. So this is meant to be shared. And we will also have an opportunity to connect afterwards. If you want to keep chatting, I'm going to put my meeting link into the chat box. If you want to keep asking questions, I love that. So that's part of what today is about, just connecting with the people I work with and seeing what's on your mind. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and let's jump right in. I will also offer, as I'm getting set up here, please ask questions in the chat box as we are going, because that's what today is about as well. We have a small group here. So I want to make sure you get your questions answered and you have your ideas, have an opportunity to share, because maybe other people in the chat may have some thoughts as well. Again, I mentioned I'm from Oak and Reads, my training business. We do a lot of workshops on public speaking, team communication, collaboration, and specifically storytelling. This has been a topic I've been leading in workshops for pretty much since the inception of Oak and Reads 8 years ago. And so today's topic is an extension of the tools I teach leaders and individuals on how to tell your own personal story in a professional setting. The tool today is really going to help supercharge the writing process of your own personal examples. So what will make today really interesting for all of you is if you can think of an example of what is something real that's happened to me or is currently happening that I would love to be able to form into a story to tell in a professional setting. That's going to make today really interesting and useful for you and kind of walk out of today having done your homework in class. All right, here is what I think I know about this group, the audience that is here on this webinar. You're here at this workshop because you're curious about using AI tools in your work. I'm assuming that you have varied levels of experience. So some people may have never used ChatGPT before. Some of you may be using it every single day. Today is going to be useful for either one of those groups and everyone in between. Today is not going to be me evangelizing these tools. I'm going to kind of assume you're open to at least experimenting. I know there's plenty of other webinars and discussions about the ethics of using AI at work and all sorts of other topics there. We only have an hour. So I'm just going to assume we're open and I'm happy to keep chatting more because those are great topics, very useful conversations to have alongside today's how-to webinar. You're open to trying something new. You're open to some experimentation. And so I really want to give an opportunity. I'd love to hear where people are in terms of their using AI at work journey. So I'm going to launch a poll right now, a quick one question poll. How often do you use ChatGPT? And you can sub in Bard or something. I just wrote ChatGPT for the poll question. How often are you using these tools? And if it stays your first time, I'm excited because I'm excited to give you some tools right away. Let's give an opportunity for everyone to answer this, and I'm going to share back our results. All right, looks like pretty much everyone had a chance to participate in this poll. Let's give the new folks who are just arriving welcome in. For folks who are just arriving, you haven't missed anything. We're just sharing a poll. How often are you using these AI tools? All right, I'm going to stop sharing and share back our results. I'm excited about this range of experience levels. I think this is a fantastic level of diversity to have. We have a handful of people never used ChatGPT before today, a lot of people in the middle, and some folks using it daily, and everyone kind of finding their way in between. So I'm really excited to have such a range of experience levels. So let's jump into the content. Here's our agenda. I'm going to give a really high level primer, just the very basics. What is this tool? What are some of the terminology you're going to need to know? And how does this tool work? Then I'm going to give some techniques. This is the critical skill I want to build. In all my Open Reads workshops, we always learn a skill or two. The skill here today is around prompt engineering. Essentially, how do you talk to these tools? How do you get online and use it? And then we're going to practice. This is the fun part. I'm going to ask for some group participation. So feel free to use the chat box when we get to the practice and demo sessions. I'm going to need some ideas from the group, and we're going to use the tool as an entire group. I'm going to show you some of the opportunities you have for telling stories at work. And then we're going to debrief. So we'll be out of here at the end of this hour, and hopefully you have a chance to set some of your own goals on how you want to continue your own exploration of this tool for your own individual communication practice. All right, how does this agenda sound to this group? You feeling good about this? All right, I see some thumbs ups. If you're not into this agenda, I don't know what to tell you, because this is what we're going to do for the next 50 minutes. So now might be the time to say goodbye, but I don't want you to say goodbye. This is going to be fun. So stick with us. We're going to keep moving. All right. I'm going to reshare my screen, and let's jump right in. The basics, the absolute basics, the things you want to know before jumping in. What is it? What is artificial generative intelligence? It's a mouthful. So a quick summary, ChatGPT. What is it? Essentially, it's a language processing tool. There's a lot of technology behind it, a lot of research. And what it has done is it has read or consumed massive amounts, terabytes upon terabytes of data using machine learning. And so it's read, basically, think of it as it having read the internet. Again, lots of questions there, lots of more discussion to be had. The term itself, GPT, I know I get a lot of questions about this, so I added this recently. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. I wouldn't worry too much about that, but what I think is really interesting is it's pre-trained. This idea of training the tool means that the machine learning process and the engineers who've been working on this for years have been tweaking and altering the way it takes inputs and outputs. The training process is also something, as you start to think about customizing ChatGPT for yourself, you can train it on your own data. You can train it on your own style of writing, on your own processes. So that idea of the ability to train it is a really interesting feature of this tool. We're not going to cover that today, but I would ask you to ask ChatGPT how to train it. That's one of the key things. You can ask the tool itself how to use it. What does ChatGPT do? Essentially, it creates text and it creates images now based on your inputs, based on what we're going to call prompts. And how does it do that? Well, you type something in. We're going to do this in a moment. You type something in, you type in a prompt, or you input an image. And then the way the tool works, I think, is fascinating. It's not necessarily thinking like a human, right? Obviously not. It's predicting the most likely word and the most likely sentence to follow from each consecutive word. That is how it thinks of language. It predicts what's the next word that makes sense in this sentence. What's the next sentence that makes sense given the sentence it just wrote? So it's really predicting step by step by step based on your prompt and then based on its own language. Fascinating. This is really interesting stuff. The challenge is it's not thinking like a person, obviously. So a couple limits. It only has a limited set of data. That data is always expanding, but specifically ChatGPT 4 has data through April 2023, which is fairly close, but it's not reading the front page of BBC.com. It's not reading the front page of ESPN.com. You can't ask it for what were last night's basketball scores. It's not going to have that data. That's what Google is still for. Also, the big blaring red light, I have to say, is it is predicting language based on language. It can hallucinate. It can make stuff up. Sometimes the data points in it are what it thinks sounds correct rather than something that is actually pulled from a website. Essentially, it makes stuff up. Now, lots of challenges there. We don't have time to go into that. However, the topic of the day is around telling your own personal stories. So with this content we're going to work on today, making some things up is going to be at least a little bit okay. Adding some descriptive detail, adding some dialogue, adding some language, kind of adding some floweriness around some of the bullet points, that's going to hopefully be okay for you, rather than writing a report that goes out to tens or hundreds or thousands of people that needs to be 100% accurate. Whole other conversation there. Okay. Plenty more information there. I would encourage everyone to do some more research. However, we're just going to get into how to use this tool. I want to get into the practice part. I will also say, again, for those of us just joining us, this is an opportunity to play along. I'm putting a link in the chat. Open up ChatGPT on your own. Create an account so you can start playing around with some of these tools as I'm going, right? Start noodling around. It's going to be more fun that way. It's a free account. I know I'm promoting ChatGPT. I don't get any money from that, but I will say this is what we're here to practice. So it's useful to have it open in a separate tab and kind of try some of these things as we're going through this workshop. All right. What are prompts? Prompts are how you talk to the tool. So a couple of tips. When you type into the tool, when you type into that little box at the bottom of ChatGPT, sometimes it's really helpful to start your sentence, start your text with a role. Tell it how you want it to behave. So, you are an expert in adult learning theory. Give me 5 ideas on exercises for communication at work. This is obviously helpful for me. You are a marketer. Give me 3 trends I should look at for holiday shopping. Act as an advertiser. What are 4 channels I should think about for purchasing paid ads online? Talk to me like I'm a 9-year-old, right? Explain something complex to me as if I'm a child. By giving the tool a role, that helps it figure out the kind of language the kind of language that the output should have, so that you start on the right track. This is one of the brilliant parts about it. It knows all these different styles of communicating. So telling it a role really narrows things down to make your outputs particularly helpful for whatever your goal is. You're a critic. Give me feedback on, and then you can cut and paste a blog post or a conversation or an email you're writing that maybe has some sensitive or challenging things to word. Give me feedback on this. It's really great as an editing tool. Always start simple. This is a really big thing I try to coach people on when you're using this tool for the first time. Short question, write me a blog post on World War II, right? Just something simple. You can always edit as you go. This is the big differentiator between using ChatGPT to get information or create content and using something like, let's say, Google, right? Google, you have a search term, that's it. You're going to have to redo the entire search phrase the next time. It's not like a conversation. ChatGPT, when you have these conversations, it knows what you've asked or prompted previously and learns from that. It's fascinating stuff. So a series of short questions and bits of feedback, like make that shorter or change it in this way. It's going to slowly get better and more specific based on your prompts. Define what you want. This is another big one. In one paragraph, describe how plants convert sunlight into energy. Right? I'm making these off the top of my head, right? So you may know this already. You don't want 10 pages. You want one paragraph. Give me 10 different titles for a blog post on SEO strategies for marketers. You don't want 40. You don't want 2. You want 10, right? And then you can start to see which ones are good. Give me more like this. Give me less like that. Something that's really helpful, I find, and we're not talking about stories anymore, is give me a 2-week schedule for a trip to Rome, or give me a weekend nap schedule for a 6-month-old who is struggling to take naps. That one's from my own personal experience, right? So I think scheduling and making lists are really helpful. I've had to create watering schedules for my plants. And so these are really interesting ways they can kind of organize data and create a schedule for a workshop or an offsite or a trip, all great use cases. And now you can have it create images. We're not going to talk so much about images today, but you can say, create a digital art rendering of blank, or create an impressionist style painting of blank. And I'm going to actually use some imagery later on in the slides. Let's see if you can catch where I had a ChatGPT, or essentially DALL-E, which is the visual creation tool, make some images for me. All right, we're moving quickly. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to tips for talking to the tool is give it feedback. Always be giving feedback. Expand on this part, shorten that, cut paragraph 3 and 4, give me another version. Or if we're writing stories, make it scarier, or make it focus more on this aspect or that aspect. Add detail to your description of the room. Give me 3 more ideas like point 4. So again, give it feedback, tell it what you want more of, tell it what you want less of, and that's going to slowly move the output towards your goal. You can always go backwards. You can start from scratch if the next step didn't quite nail it, but these types of feedback are really useful to kind of tweak and adjust outputs to your desired end state. The big idea, and I'm going to stop talking and I want to do some interactive portion right now. We're going to actually open up the tool. The big idea, the tool is an expert on itself. So if you're ever stuck, ask it for advice. What should I do next? Or how can I have you create a blog post for me on blank? And that will help give you feedback on how to then prompt it. It's a little strange to be asking the tool how to use the tool, but essentially it will tell you interesting next steps if you ever get stuck. I've asked it a lot of times, what should I do next? Or how do I have you create a more accurate depiction of blank? And it'll tell you. All right. Let's do a demo. I'd love to hear from some folks in the chat box. Just give us a topic. What's a topic you're interested in? Something that's top of mind. I'm going to then have ChatGPT create some content for us on that topic so I can show you how the tool works. So I'd love to get some ideas in the chat box. And then for other people's ideas, give a little thumbs up or a happy face if you like their idea also. What's just a general topic? Ooh, okay. Recommended fiction reading for 2024. Okay, I like that. What else? Let's get a couple more and we'll see what people feel is interesting. What's a topic we're interested in? And I'm going to get our window open as we're generating ideas. Carolyn has some recommended fiction. Planning a 1-week trip to Costa Rica. Ooh, I love that. Any other ideas? And feel free to give a little thumbs up. Prepare at a workshop. Ooh, okay. Iris, when you say that, give me a little bit more about what you mean. So far, Steve has 1 thumbs up on 1-week trip to Costa Rica.
Yeah, you asked me directly, or?
Yeah, Iris, you're saying preparing a workshop.
Yes, prepare a workshop. You are a profi in preparing workshops, I think. Maybe about interactive training with theater improv methods.
Cool. Okay. You hit on something I'm very interested in, preparing improv-based workshops. I love that. Just for the sake of argument today, I think we're going to keep it a little simpler. Steve's winning with his 1-week trip to Costa Rica. I love all these. What to make for dinner, winter activities for children. That's a really good one. Agenda for meetings. We're going to go with the Costa Rica trip just because it's kind of a fun example. So I'm going to reshare my screen here and open up the ChatGPT window, and we're going to do it together. 1 second. Okay. So as you can see, I've opened up the window here, ChatGPT 4. How can I help you today? They've started to give some little suggestions here at the bottom, which I think is really interesting, right? Having it recommend a dish to cook, show me some code, creating a charter to start a film club. It's starting to realize ChatGPT needs some prompts to help people kind of understand the options you can use it for. So I'm going to say, create an itinerary for a 1-week trip to Costa Rica. Boom. Oop, have to click it. All right, so now you can see my prompt here at the top. This is me. And then ChatGPT giving its response. Every response is formatted in different ways. And you can see, it's giving me kind of some encouragement. It's an exciting endeavor. A little bit of a primer on what it's going to cover, some rainforests and beaches and wildlife. And then, okay. Now it breaks it down by city, by what we will cover in those cities, departure, and then some additional travel tips, renting a car, some food and weather, and then kind of a little summary. So great 1-week trip. Now I'm going to have it do some things, and I've kind of prepared some
by the way,
ideas.
that's the exact trip that I already took. It's so
Did you ask ChatGPT to plan your agenda, or is it just
no, it was all done old-fashioned ways. So anyway, it's just funny that it ended up doing exactly the trip I did.
That is funny. Yeah. And so it's funny when it starts to read minds. So just for the sake of argument, I'm going to have it push it to do some funny things with this. All right. So write me a 300 word blog post describing this 1-week trip. Let's see what it does. So this is kind of writing it. If I were to do a travel blog, let's say, pitching people. So same content, but in a different format, which I always find to be interesting. A really great use of ChatGPT, reformatting stuff. It's going to kind of flesh out the text a little bit, not just bullet points, different style.
Yeah, I did it on the 17th. But that I can find that.
To mute if you can. All right. Okay, so this is one version. I think this is really interesting. I'm going to ask it, tell me 5 products I should purchase for this trip. So give me some, like a shopping list, essentially. So it's going to give me some things I should purchase, some hiking shoes, water-resistant sunscreen, and let's say I'm going to have it do one more thing, which is kind of a little silly one. I'm going to give it a role right now. So act as a travel agent. Give me 3 pieces of advice for planning this trip. So it really takes on the role. As a travel agent, I'd be delighted to offer you some advice for planning your trip. So now it's going to give me some more general kind of understand the climate, pack the right clothes, plan your itinerary of travel times. It can take a while to get from place to place. Embrace the lifestyle. I love that. All right, and just for sake of argument, I'm going to do a different role. Act as a local. Give me 3 places I shouldn't miss when I visit Costa Rica. This is always what you want to know. What are people who live there? What are they doing? Some insider tips. It's going to give me some national parks. All right. got me a national park, a cloud forest, which is someplace I would love to visit, and experiencing beach life. I think you get the point here. I'm going to stop sharing. It took us 2 minutes to get content. We have a 10-day trip. People are starting to get some book their flights. We have a 10-day or 7-day trip. We have a shopping list to make sure, or a packing list. We have some general advice to kind of get our heads in the right place. And we have some places that are kind of insidery must visit. Now, we could spend a lot more time on this, but today is not necessarily about preparing for a trip to Costa Rica. I just wanted to give you a general sense of ways you can interact with it and tips for prompting, kind of putting that into play. But I would encourage you, the nice thing about this is you could mold it and change it. I want a little bit more like day 7. I want to spend 4 days in San Juan. What would I do then? How would I change that agenda? Or San Jose, sorry. How would I change that agenda if I spent 10 days or 20 days, right? So this is kind of the brilliant part. It'll immediately create a brand new itinerary for you. You don't have to mix and match. Oh yeah, and Steve, Google Bard. There's links and websites. Fantastic. I want to move towards storytelling, which is what today is about. So let me reshare my screen. And again, I want to encourage everyone. Today will be really useful if you're playing along at home. So open up another tab, because as I'm going to introduce this storytelling technique, I want to encourage you to use your own example. And it works well if you have a tab open with ChatGPT and maybe something you can take notes in. So even just a Google Doc or some text doc, because you're going to need that to cut and paste. You'll see what I mean. Okay, resharing my screen and moving on. We covered the basics. We covered prompt engineering, how to talk to it. Now let's practice. This is a technique that I have been coaching people in person for years. It's the idea of creating a personal story playbook. Essentially, a few stories that you have in your back pocket that you find useful to tell in a professional setting. And what I mean by that is stories that show the value of resilience, or show your origin story, how you got to be in the role you are today. Maybe you have a unique path to that. Stories you might tell in job interviews, or to inspire teammates, or to make a point more emotionally rather than just stating it as bullet points in a PowerPoint. These are all really useful stories. Everyone has different personal experiences that you might want to use to mine to find the raw material for a story. If we had a lot more time, we could go into how to find those really good nuggets. But for now, I'm just going to show you, once you have that nugget, that thing you want to talk about in a story format, in a professional setting, how do you then use this tool to basically write the story you can then tell? There are 4 steps, and I came up with these steps. They're constantly changing, but I think they can be really useful to using this tool to write your personal stories. First, you gather your inputs, and I will walk us through each of these steps as we go. Don't worry. You gather your inputs. This is work you have to do on your own. What are the key points I want to make sure this story includes? Then you plug it into ChatGPT, and then you tweak it. So you focus that story, focus on that big idea. Then you add details, add characters, add details, add description, and then you mess around with the style. That's our last step. That's a really fun one. We'll get to that in a moment. All right. What are the inputs? What are the key things? Oh yeah, Steve, that image is AI generated. 10 points to Steve for nailing that, nailing that one. What are the inputs you need to come up with, essentially to put into the tool as your prompt? You got to know your audience. Who's the audience for this story? What do they care about? Who are you going to tell it to? And I'm going to use a made-up entrepreneurship example. Essentially, how would you tell the origin story of a particular startup? This is a made-up startup, but I think it can be helpful. It may resonate with some folks. So I'm going to tell this in a pitch meeting, right? And I'm going to tell it to potential investors. And what do they care about? Their return on investment. Kind of why should you put money into this business? What's the big idea with my story? What's interesting or new? This is a made-up startup, and it's using AI to help people learn how to do digital tasks on their own, specifically seniors, teaching seniors how to use new tools on their phone or on their computer, and it sees what they see as they're looking at the phone. So the idea is it replaces having to have someone side by side showing them how to use a certain app or use a certain tool. It uses visual recognition, kind of sees what they're looking at and sees what's on the phone. Again, I wish I made this up, but I'm just sort of making up a tool. That's the big idea. That's what I want people to walk away with. Context. Where's the story? When does it occur? Starts in 2020 at the beginning of COVID, right? So this is where the idea was hatched for this app, this made up app. Who's the story about? Customers and a sample customer, my made up father. That's not my father's name. Charles, a senior that struggles to learn technology by himself. And also I want to make sure I'm included. Me, Dave, the founder, and my made up co-founder, Rishi. Again, big points here. I'm not writing a ton here. These are just quick little nuggets that help form the backbone or the spine of this story. The tool itself will take these inputs and turn it into a fully fleshed out story with a beginning and middle and end. That's how we're really going to make best use of the artificial language generation tool. Okay, how does the story start? What's broken? What's the inciting incident? What kicks this story into gear? Parents struggling to use their phone to order groceries during COVID. Maybe other people can relate to this, right? Want them to stay safe, want them to order delivery, but struggling to learn the actual app. And what happens in this story? What are the plot details? What's a critical moment? There was a Zoom call where I couldn't teach my pretend father how to use this app. So this is a moment, this is a scene in the story, this key moment where there's frustration, right? My wife and I couldn't reach through the Zoom screen to grab their phone and show them what to do, right? This is a scene we want to make sure is very much visually and emotionally described in this story. And how does it end? Well, what happens is we created a software. It's a teaching tool, and how it ends for us, the characters, is we feel reduced anxiety because now we know that people can learn this tool, learn technology using this app. Again, this is all made up. For you, I want you to think about what's your story, right? Is it how you got your job? Is it a project you're working on that has a really cool outcome or something you want to talk to people about? Is it a moment where you learned a key lesson at work, maybe an embarrassing moment you had to recover from, or an exciting moment you were recognized for? Whatever that is, I'd encourage you to walk through these questions because this is going to form your story prompt. It doesn't have to take very long because you can always edit it as you go. Here's what you come up with. It's a bunch of text. And you're going to prompt at the beginning, write a story I can use in a professional setting that includes the following details: the audience, the big idea, context, the characters, the conflict, plot details, and how it ends. If I were to just put this on a slide, as I've done, this is not a very interesting story. There's no story here. It's just the raw materials of story. What we're going to do right now is I'm going to copy this into ChatGPT, and it's going to write our story right in front of our eyes. So let's do it together. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to copy this and reopen ChatGPT in a new window. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so you can see the window open. I created a new chat by hitting this new chat button up here. And I'm literally just going to paste all that text. It's kind of a large chunk of text, but it can handle it. It is a very powerful tool. So it's just right here. I don't really format it other than how it's already in here. There might be some spelling mistakes. That's okay. I'm going to send the message and we're going to see it write the story in real time. So as you can see, it's using some of my prompts, but it's reordering them. Notice how inciting incident came at the beginning. It's focusing on the innovation. I didn't use that term. It's organizing this all on its own. Talking about the innovation, experience was a revelation. And then what changed, this transformation? This is a story about the way it's written now, a story about changing the relationship of Charles to technology. Again, I didn't put any of that in here. And here's where it incorporates the audience and knowing that I'm speaking to investors. And this language here, it's a bridge connecting generations, easing the burden of technology adoption for seniors and opening a world of possibilities. For investors, it's an opportunity to be at the forefront of a significant and growing market, ensuring a return on investment that's both financially rewarding and socially impactful. Okay. I have used this exact same prompt probably about 20 different times to test this workshop. It's a different story, different organization, different format every single time, which is one of the things that I find to be fascinating about this tool. Now, there's things that are great about this story. I really like this title, Bridging Generations, a Tech Tale of Empowerment. But I also, just for the sake of argument, I might not be super happy with this. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it doesn't really get the point across. Maybe I want a little more detail in certain areas. So let's go back to our prompting tools, our prompting skills. How do we make this story a little bit better? So this is the key thing. This is version 1.0. We're going to try to tweak and alter this story as best we can. So I'm going to go to step 2. I want to reshare my screen here. And I want to give some tips on how to make this story better. And as you're doing this for your story, follow along. We want to focus it on our big idea. This is the next prompt I'm going to try. Focus more on blank, right? Add details. These are examples of things we could have it use. We could say to it to focus it a little bit more. Add details on how this helps customers and partners to blank, right? I want to really focus more on the nuts and bolts of how it works and helps customers. That could be a direction we go in. Or I care less about this father and this Zoom meeting during COVID. I'm less interested in that. Let's focus on where we're going, right? What is this going to look like, this technology, in a year or two? How is it going to affect even more people? Or just tell it to look at it a different way. This is one of my favorite prompts. Explore other possibilities. How might this problem change if we think about it in a new, more creative way? I'm going to ask you, this is a choose your own adventure moment. In the chat box, which of these 3 or something else should be our next prompt? Do we want more details? Do we want to go to the future? Or do we want to shake up the dice and have it explore this problem in a different way? What's interested? Okay, Steve says number 2, future. That's 2 votes for future. That's good enough for me. Great, let's see where we're going. I'm going to reshare. And we're going to see where it goes in the future. I'm glad you picked this one. This is always generates something interesting. So simply, I'm just going to say, if I can spell it right, take us into the future. Where are we going with, and I'm going to say, with this technology? Okay. This is where it gets fascinating for me personally. With a simple 1-sentence prompt, it is now generating completely new ideas that relate to this technology and that relates to this fictional technology. However, it's generating these new ideas based on its understanding of all of the different paths that other similar technologies may have gone through. Look at this list. I'm gonna scroll up a little bit. Our software, which began as a tool to help seniors navigate digital tasks, right? That was our initial prompt, has evolved into a comprehensive ecosystem that seamlessly integrates into the daily lives of its users. It's not just an app, it's a companion, a guide, and a bridge to the wider world. These expanded capabilities are completely made up, right? It's guessing, but knowing that how these statements typically sound and then generating future language. VR, health monitoring, personalized learning journeys. This is a side note. It is a great brainstorming tool, ChatGPT. And since we're generating ideas for business, this is all it brainstorming on its own where it could go. Now, I could ask for more detail. Give me 10 bullet points on how the VR integration would work, or tell me about how voice and gesture control, how would I market this? Give me 5 blog post ideas for a way to advertise voice and gesture control in this made up product. I could then do that. But let's keep moving in our direction because we could get lost for days in this pretend product. I want to go to step 3. So I want to go to step 3, and I want to talk about a different way to edit your story. So let me open up my slides again. Step 3, back to story. What makes an interesting story interesting? Characters, people, and sensory details, descriptive language. So it's a great opportunity. We're going to go back to our initial story because the future one is probably a little bit more like a PR release. Adding characters. So you can add characters. So you could add Dave, a person working on blank. So you could add Michael. He is an engineer working on the back-end technology. Incorporate this person into the story. Or you can create a scene, right? I want you to really flesh out that scene, that Zoom meeting where that frustrating conversation happened around learning the new technology. Really paint that picture. Write a scene where Dave meets blank and discovers something else. Or one of my personal favorites is create a metaphor. Add some sensory detail. Include a metaphor for the challenge we're solving. Or add visual details describing the living room as my wife and I are frustratingly trying to teach my father how to use a delivery app. Again, choose your own adventure time. Which of these 3 would we like to explore with our story so far? And we can do a couple different ones too. And as we're doing it, do you want a character? Okay, Kimberly's saying 3 metaphors. Great. I've got 2 votes for metaphor. I love the metaphor one because it is fascinating how metaphors get created with ChatGPT. So let's do that. Let's see what it does. And I have no idea what's going to happen. So I'm going to reshare my screen. All right. Create 3 metaphors for this technology. Ooh, okay. Interesting. 3 completely different metaphors. It's like a digital compass. And I like, sometimes the details are really interesting. It's a vast ocean of technology. So it's a metaphor within a metaphor. And it guides seniors through the digital world. It's pretty good. I like that one. The Rosetta Stone. Just as the Rosetta Stone was crucial in deciphering ancient languages, this software is a Rosetta Stone for seniors, decoding perplexing language of modern technology. So that's a really interesting one too. I like that. And then this one's fascinating. It's a gardener. It nurtures the seeds of digital literacy in seniors. It tends to the individual needs of each user, ensuring that their skills grow and flourish. Like a gardener who knows precisely when to water and when to prune, the software fosters growth. These are kind of lovely. So Again, you may like these, you may have it, something you can do is say, create 15 more metaphors, or something that I like to do is give me 5 more, just like number 3. So give me 5 more similar to a gardener. Some may be interesting, some may be useless, but it continues that conversation. Again, it's the more you can tweak and edit and prompt, the more interesting ideas you can gather, and then you can pick and choose the ones you like at the end. All right, there's one more step. One more step before we're going to close out for the day. If I'm honest, I think this is my favorite step to storytelling using ChatGPT. It's playing with the style. Remember back from, what is ChatGPT slide? It's essentially consumed as much of the internet as possible. It's read everything. It's read the entire works of Shakespeare. It's read every CNN.com headline up until April 2023. It has scraped every single script of every single episode of Friends that is available online. It knows all the references. So you can mess around with this and really have some fun. Tell this story in the style of blank. So this is a tiny list of literally anything. Tell the story in the style of a children's bedtime story, right? A nursery rhyme. You can change it to make this like the front page story in the New York Times. Use New York Times style. Tell the story like an episode of Friends. I've done this one recently and it's ridiculous. Tell the story as if it was me talking to a friend I'm just catching up with, a really good friend, over drinks at a bar. Tell the story in the style of a romance novel. Boil it down to 3 PR talking points that I can share very easily. Could be something else. So I want to get an idea from the group. This is another choose your own adventure moment. What style? And it doesn't have to be one of this list. It could be something you come up with. What style would we like to convert this story into right now? All right, Carolyn's saying romance novel or Friends. Kimberly's saying Friends. Okay, I think we got to do an episode of Friends because it's pretty funny. All right, so let's just do that. I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay, so I'm just going to put it at the bottom here. And a quick note, you can always go back to a previous version. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to start at the bottom here and build off of the fact that it knows we're telling a story, but I could just have it turn the initial version or the future version, just that, into an episode of Friends. Tell this story in the style of an episode of the TV show Friends. Include dialogue. This is kind of a fun part. Let's see what it does. And so it's writing it like a script. It has a title, the one where technology bridges generations, which I think we could use a little punching up there. We're in Central Perk. Monica's there, already making fun of Ross from the first line. And what I find to be very delightful is it knows all the characters. It knows the types of jokes they make. It doesn't necessarily make great jokes, but it does them in a certain style. So I'm looking at like a Chandler joke. Maybe what he needs is a software that's like a friendly guide, like Hugsy, my bedtime penguin pal, but for tech. It kind of sounds like a Chandler joke, but there's not really a punchline there. And you can flesh this out as you want. I'll do one more. We had another suggestion of a romance novel. Tell this story in the style of a romance novel. It gives great titles. Whispers of a Digital Heart. And it just starts, it's sort of giving a fleshed or a high level outline. So you could then have it write these individual chapters in a little bit more detail. But it uses the same structure and some of the language here. All right, enough here, enough fun here. I'm gonna pause this. You can always pause it by hitting that. I'm gonna stop sharing that. I'm gonna go back to our slides. I think you get the point with style. You can literally pick any style in the world. You can have it converted into a haiku. You could have it converted into a script. Whatever you can think of, it will change it and do that instantly. That is particularly useful if you want to tell your story in different settings. So I'm not saying the Friends episode is how you're going to tell your story, but if you want a version you could tell in an interview, or you want a version you could tell at an all hands meeting, or you want a version you could tell one-on-one to someone, the style can change and suit you depending on who your audience is. I find that to be a very particular use case for changing style. So let's close up, and I want to get questions because we're gonna wrap up for the day. Let me share my screen one more time. Here's what we covered today. We covered the basics. What's the tool? We covered the skill, how to talk to ChatGPT. That's prompt engineering. We covered some practice. We played around with it. We used a sample story. We changed the style. Now I'd love to hear, sorry, this was our agenda. Now I'd love to hear what you thought. What are you going to do? And also what questions do you have? So how was today? Was there anything that you were surprised by, something new that you took away? And do you feel differently about ChatGPT after this workshop? I'd love to get folks to respond in the chat box before we close out for today. Is there something you want to take away and practice? And specifically, this is a challenge to everyone. What's next for you? What will you do to keep exploring this tool? Is there something specific you want to try? You just want to generally play around with it? Is there part of your job, content creation wise, where you could explore this? The more you can share here, the more other people can take away applications that might be useful for them as well. I find that's really useful in these demo workshops. Ideas you have could be very useful for someone who's never thought of that use case. And thinking about how can you use this tool to help you save some time? I think about it in storytelling as a great way to help people get to the first 80% of your story. Structure it out, get a first version, and then get over the writer's block that a lot of people have, or they have an idea, they don't know how to get started. It is a great writer's block defeating tool for your own personal stories. All right, so I'm just looking at our chat here. These are great ideas. Story frameworks, job-related issues. Kimberly wants this for high school. That's a whole other bucket of writing papers. It can write a paper on anything instantly. Yeah, stories for trainings, different emails. Beth, I think that's a fantastic use case. I use this for drafting emails a lot, especially for on topics or situations where I've never written an email on that. It gives me a good starting point. Project outlines, that's great. Yeah, metaphors. I'm glad that resonated with you, Gary. I find that the descriptive language, the metaphors, it comes up with a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have thought of. So I want to, first of all, thank everyone for coming today. Thank everyone for being such a great group, an interactive group. I know this wasn't just a sit back and watch workshop, so I really appreciate that. I will stick around. If you want to have questions, I'll end the recording. But if you wouldn't mind, give me some feedback. I'm putting a link in the chat. What worked about today? What could be different? What could change? As I mentioned, this workshop is a work in progress. So are there topics you wanted to address in a future version? I'm happy to do another webinar because I find this stuff to be fascinating. Otherwise, please message me if you want to keep chatting. This is my email. I'm putting that in the chat. I'm always happy to set up time to talk one-on-one, answer your questions, and essentially talk about how we might collaborate Quick plug. I do workshops on group communication and leadership skills, manager skills, public speaking skills, feedback skills. We do offsites and also one-on-one coaching. So if you're interested in any of that, please message me. I'd love to work with you. I know a lot of you I've worked with already. Otherwise, stick around if you want to chat. I got some time, but have a great rest of your day and enjoy using this tool. I think it's fascinating and we'll see where it goes. So have a great afternoon, everyone.